We on here? Oh no, it's now started. Hello everyone, we are live, and this is the second community engineering hangout, live stream, whatever we want to call it. Last month, we had some great knowledge on the testing framework, and today we have got some guys in from the PWA studio to talk about that. Yeah, firstly, thank you very much for tuning in today and also tuning in last time. We really appreciate it. Without having the community, this live stream is useless. So thank you very much for joining in, whether it's comments, whether it's questions in the chat, whether it's requesting what comes next with the videos. Yeah, so we're going to kick it off a little bit differently from last week. We've got two great community members in the chat. We've got Federico and Mohammed. And we're just going to quiz them a little bit and talk about contribution. Yeah, so let's start with Federico. Why don't we start with you, man? Could you please introduce yourself to the live stream?
Okay, I'm Federico from Argentina. I work for a Magento partner, White & Hammer. So we are seeing Magento issues all the day, basically.
So, okay. You're seeing issues, so you want to fix them, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, we support clients with Magento 1 instances, and we also implement Magento 2 sites. We have a few now implemented, so that's very cool for us. That's what we do.
Nice, cool. The first question I have for you, other than the introduction, is how did you first hear about contribution to Magento 2?
Yeah, so it was in our first Magento 2 implementation when we started seeing some issues. We started digging in the GitHub repo. So we found that some of the issues we were facing, it already happened to some other Magento users. They were reported. For some of them, there were fixes. So we got like more involved in the GitHub repo. We started interacting a little bit with it. So I think that's how we hear about it. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us the story of your first pull request, please? The first one you got in merged.
Yeah, actually it was a fix on the SFTP class of the Magento framework. And the story is we had this third-party extension installed in Magento 2 for a client that stopped working once we upgraded Magento to 2.11, I guess. So I started digging into the issue. I realized the underlying library of the SSH library, PHP cyclib, was upgraded to a new version. And there were some constants being used in the SFTP class of Magento framework, which were outdated. So whenever trying to connect via SFTP, which was the purpose of this extension, it pushed some other exports through SFTP to an external server. Well, it failed, and it was because of some outdated constants being used. I fixed those. I made the pull request, and in a few months that got merged. So it's fixed now.
Cool. And what was the hardest part about contribution for you?
Well, right now it's finding time. I think you know this because we talk every week. But yeah, finding time. I think between my day job, my personal life stuff. I think that's the most difficult part for me. I don't think I can think of any difficult part on interacting with you guys or working on the. I'm currently working on the import-export community project, and I think that's great. We have, I think, the support we need in order to move that forward. So I think the biggest issue right now for me is the time.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate that there's only so much time in the day, and we really appreciate people giving up their free time or part of their working day or whatever to help us out. So with that in mind, if you're so busy and you just can't get the time or as much time as you'd like to do it, what would you recommend if someone wants to start but isn't really sure how to, or isn't really sure what's the best in terms of timing or projects or whatever? What's your top tip for people looking to start with contribution?
Well, I think I would say get involved in the Slack channel. Talk with some of you guys. So far, I've talked with you. I also interacted with Eugene Tulika from Magento. When I had to interact with you guys, you have been very helpful, and I guess I think any issue that we could have, I think you guys would help us solve if there is the will to contribute or to participate. So I would say my tip would be just interact with with the community, get involved, and things will move forward.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the honesty. It's nice. So thank you very much for. I stole someone's question. That's because I practice and I've got great questions, Danielle. So the other person that's joined us from the community in this call is Mohammed. So yeah, same question over to you, Mohammed. Let's introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about you, where you're from, what you do, that sort of thing to start with.
Hi, everybody. So actually, I'm backend at economics based in Austria, backend developer, backend certified developer, and PHP Zen certified engineer. Mainly working on APIs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. How did you first hear about contribution? What's the driving force behind starting contribution for you?
This is actually because a working mate of mine, who is Anna Fulker, who is actually deeply involved in the community, and I started with her within Magento meetup in Vienna, and there you meet people, you hear about contribution, like some issues and so on, like. You get to the community more deeply, and you get to the contribution days and the contribution way.
Cool, fabulous. Yeah, okay. So everyone remembers their first time. So tell us about your first time. What's your first pull request?
It was actually a fallback for the position attribute for the product links in the REST API. So as I said, I mainly work on the APIs. We were developing, implementing a project who was using bundle products with product links related cross-sell and upsell. We had a problem that only 2 products were added by each request, and then we noticed that all of them are already existed in the database, but the position wasn't set correctly.
Okay. I think I remember that pull request.
Exactly. Yeah,
was I the one that merged it?
Exactly.
Okay. That's why I remember the pull request. Okay, cool. Okay, and a little bit different from Federico's questions that I gave him, but why do you think that contribution is important for Magento as a company and also for the Magento community as a whole?
So actually, if I specifically talked about Magento 2 as a platform and as a solution which we are providing to the market, is that it's now a young solution, young platform, which now building its character and its personality. So the more we get it fixed, the more we get more issues solved. The way the way we make it better, and for sure we can make it better for ourselves, for our market, for Magento itself. It's actually about the community. As Federico said, the community is really easy to get involved in, and you can only use the Slack, join the community channel. You can talk easily to each one, start a chat. There's more often some community projects like feature PHP 7.2, which you can join on the run. You can communicate to people who are working on it, and like easily manage your time, because it's always the problem of the time after the work and the private stuff as well. You can easily work with the manager, also responsible persons, and get things managed.
Cool. All right. And last question for you, at least from now. We will be taking questions later on from the live chat. So if anyone has a question for either Federico or Mohammed, get it in the chat and we'll ask them after the PWA demo as part of the Q&A section. But the last question for you is, if there is someone out there watching this who would like to get into contribution, what is your biggest tip, your highest recommendation for them, apart from joining the Slack or something like that? Maybe something specific with the coding or something like that. I don't know.
It's actually about the first pull request. So don't get upset if you get it rejected. You will always learn something more from the pull request. So don't get upset if you get your first pull request rejected. I think it's really important. And I had it like from the other team members in my team. It's really a pretty important point.
Okay. Do you feel that it can be maybe one of the reasons why people don't start contributing is they kind of are a little bit, I don't know, reluctant to kind of publicly show code or want that kind of public feedback?
Sometimes yes. For some person, yes, actually. I heard it many times.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you both very much. If you wouldn't mind sticking around, we've just got Ben's bag come into this. Sweet. Hey, Ben. Oh. Yeah, it's so professional. If you wouldn't mind sticking around, if there are any questions that come up, we will get them to you during the Q&A section. I appreciate your time, especially Mohammed, because it is in the evening. So I appreciate it. Friday evening, and you come join us. So I appreciate that. All right. So the next part is, once I've muted Ben. There we go. That's better. The next part is we're going to go on and have a PWA demo. We have Eric, we have James, we have Jimmy, and we have Andrew. And they're here to share what's up with PWA Studio with you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. Start thinking through questions, and we will get those questions to them after the demo. And any question, I would say, is open for them, right? Cool. All right, over to you guys. And yeah.
Okay, very good. So David, thank you so much for having us in the community again. This is very much a big part of what we do, and this is a particularly big week for the team. And so as you're starting to see a lot of buzz in Slack, as you're seeing a lot of buzz in social media, we've got some things to share this week. And so the timing couldn't be better. And what I'm going to do is give you guys a little bit of an overview from a product perspective, and not be the one thing holding you back from a couple of the demos that you're going to see from Jimmy, from James, and Andrew. And yes, promise to make some time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, let me give you a little bit of a backdrop of things. I know it's been a while since we've talked, and again, we'll keep this more focused on the why, the what, and the when, and then we'll show what this looks like here. So this is not the McLaurin, Magento and McLaurin, by the way, but we found a good orange that we felt represented the essence of what we're doing. Hope you guys can appreciate this. So in terms of progressive web apps, there's a lot of information that's out there, but we do want to spend probably a minute or so kind of talking through why we're doing this. And so in terms of why we're doing this, a lot of the information out there from Google and others is...
Hang on, sorry, Eric. We are just seeing a black screen for you.
Okay, let me...
you might not be able to be in presentation mode, I think.
All right, let me see here real quick. How's that?
Yeah, there we have it.
All right, so I'll be out of presentation mode and keep that keep it like this, just to, so no problem. So yeah, talking about progressive web apps, why we're doing it. So we get this question from time and time again, but the reality is, what we're doing is really going to be about all the things that Google in our collaboration and others have started to see. There's been some great examples in the community with Devante, DT, and many others. But ultimately, it comes down to performance and those key user experiences around PWA that we know will make for that next generation of shopping experience. And so, having just joined the team, but not necessarily Magento, in the past couple of weeks, it's really clear that we're on to something. It's in many ways it's delivering where responsive left off. In many ways, it's really building upon a lot of the great research that we've known to date, whether that be the survey. So thank you so much for your participation there, as well as the research from UX Danielle and others that have highlighted the opportunity and highlighted the need for us to not only just address the benefits of PWA, those are certain. But more so the opportunity which is around the workflow. So James, Jimmy, Andrew, and team have known this and been working towards this for quite some time, and we're really anxious to share with you this, and then also get your feedback on it now that we're out in pre-alpha. So a little bit about the kind of the what this is, and again, some of you may have already seen this, but we really want to kind of set the stage with regard to the three major aspects of PWA with regard to our offering around the studio. On the left here is the shopper experience, and so as you would expect, we want to look at the shopping experience and every aspect of that. And use that as a basis for developing those tools. Now, we made a conscious decision a couple months ago to really double down that development experience that you see on the middle. James has done a great job evangelizing and doing updates and such at Mage Titans events and others. But we wanted to build that around what we feel is a very tangible asset, a very tangible resource that has often been valuable in front-end development, Magento. And so we've seen research where the Luma reference theme, the blank themes are useful, but ultimately PWA is not just about performance; it's about those experiences. We're looking at them all around, essentially within the same time frame. And so ultimately, when we look at this, that sets the stage for that development stereo where we're spending the most time about today. And not just necessarily that theme. The theme itself has to happen, but essentially is going to be basically an output or a byproduct of the shopper experience. So as many of you have already seen, really no major changes in here, just more depth than breadth. We're really focused on React, Redux, Webpack, and things that you'll see very soon here. But it's about the end-to-end developer experience, and I'm glad actually Ben's on the call here. He had a chance to see a very early preview a couple weeks ago, and I think he actually summed it up really well, which was for the first time in a long time, being able to see that heads-up experience, and so being able to, when you do front-end development for Magento, seeing everything at once in a very easy to use, very friendly, very guided way, but also that benefit of the real-time updates, and that's what you're going to see. And that concept of real-time updates gets to that workflow opportunity that we highlighted earlier, which is it's going to take less time to create these based on the standards, based on people learning more standard frameworks, and ultimately when changes need to be made, they're done a lot more quickly than you have before. So we're pretty excited about that. And we really think we can not only look at these examples, but also look at them and with an eye towards the standards, and also learn from the ones that are out there. Again, from from Devante, Didi, Meanbee, and others. And then last but not least, we are tied to the 2.3 release that's coming out later this year. GraphQL is a big part of our story that helps us achieve even more of the performance that you'll see out there. But technically not a requirement. There are examples that don't use that, but we believe, especially as you look and compare these examples, compare other sites, really anything using tools from Google like Lighthouse and others, there's an opportunity to make performance really key in this, and GraphQL is the way to do that. And so that's coming, that's coming in 2.3, and then Misha and the team have done a nice job, I think, at demos like this and others, kind of walking through what's to come there. So in terms of what it is, just to kind of what to expect here in the demo, we're really looking at that kind of swivel chair developer experience with PWA. And what you see on the left is again, very typical developer experience. The tools, what you'll see, what you'll interact with will be very familiar with what you'll experience inside of a traditional IDE. It's about what kind of manifests inside of that. It's part of several things that eventually will help you make those real-time updates, give you kind of that heads-up display relative to your theme. In this case, this is a concept that we're working on for the next generation version of Venya. So what's a product without a timeline? So we're going to go through this and kind of show you what this looks like here shortly. But just to kind of frame the rest of the conversation, the team has been working extremely hard on bringing these tools to market. And again, for those of you who are participating in the Slack channels, you're starting to see some great some great feedback and some great conversations between James, Andrew, and Jimmy with folks there on kind of what's happening, why is this, why is that, and this week marks the week of our pre-alpha, and so we've got a lot of great code for teams like the ones here to take a look at, give us feedback, maybe even contribute as part of our early access program, because what we're doing is a little bit different. We're running this very transparent. We're running this very open, but we're also looking for a couple case studies along the way. But ultimately, without seeing it, it's hard for teams to make that assessment. And so this week's a big part of that assessment. And what we're doing between now and Q3 is actually pretty exciting. So in March brings us to Reacticon. We've got both Andrew and James going to that, and there's going to be a Q&A with Yissi and many others in the Netherlands. So we're excited about that. There'll be more details, more demos, more of a kind of a detailed conversation there. So that's coming up around the corner. And of course, Imagine. So as we're going to pre-alpha, we're moving very fast. We're looking for contributions, and we're going into a beta at Imagine. It's going to include a lot more of what you expect, more documentation, some learning materials, everything that you would be to even be more prepared for considering these tools for your next store. And in the end, towards the end of the year, we are looking at a full GraphQL set of these tools, even more documentation. And of course, without code, we need documentation and training as well. So we're working with Magento U and many of the folks here in the community on what that looks like, but more to come there, and more of what you would expect in kind of traditional Magento support. And again, for those who are tracking us in Slack, this is what it looks like. So so we've got the repositories that we're going to walk through here very shortly. For those of you who had some questions recently, we have stood up a separate organization, much like you'll see in other companies. And so the concept of Magento Research is very much that. It's about this playground, that this means for us to develop very quickly, track issues, bring in feedback, and really use the approach that the community engineering team, obviously in close concert with them to pull this all together for that. And so in that, you'll see, again, much of what you'll see here, and we put the name of that here in this particular slide. So that's kind of it for the repo. Again, I always hate to be the person between here and a demo, but without further ado, what I'm going to do is turn it over here to Jimmy, and he's going to get us started talking through theming, and then go through James, and eventually end with extensibility in what Andrew will show.
Cool. I missed the count, but I'll be giving it a shot. To introduce myself, I'm Jimmy Sanford. I'm a senior developer working on the front end here at Magento, specifically on this PWA effort. And so what I'm going to be showing is what we've got in terms of a theme. It's sort of a proving ground for a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about with PWA. So we'll try and get the share going. Okay, can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah, it's good, man. Thanks.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so like we said, there's actually a number of different pieces to our effort, with PWA. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is help you stand up a theme, right? All the other tools that we're building, including Peregrine, including PWA build pack, and anything else we do, what we're trying to get you to is building a theme that's a JavaScript application that has a service worker, et cetera, that meets all the PWA criteria. And so what we have that's still internal at this point, unlike the other tools, is kind of a reference implementation. And so it's private, but we're going to dive into that today just to give you an idea of what it looks like. And that's going to consist of two pieces, right? It's going to have a module, right? This is a Magento module that's going to set up our routing and things like that. And so this is all stuff you'd be familiar with. And then it's going to have a theme. And if any of you have done any sort of work integrating a framework like React with Magento, then this is going to be pretty familiar. It's basically taking standard React, standard modern JavaScript workflow and putting it inside of a theme. And so we'll get to take a look at what that looks like here. So I'll switch over to Visual Studio. We can look at this. So basically the theme is going to be a standard NPM package, right? It's going to have a name, it's going to have an entry point, it's going to have scripts for building, for starting a dev server, running tests, linting, the rest. We'll pull in our dependencies that we were showing off earlier, like Peregrine, which is going to help you stand up the React application. We'll have all of the normal React dependencies, including React itself, the router, Redux, etc. And then a bunch of developer dependencies for Babel and Webpack on the build side, and everything else that you need, for your development process. But it's very standard. It's just living inside of a Magento theme. And then if we go over and look at the entry point, right, which is where the JavaScript app kicks off, right? When you send the JavaScript in one bundle to the client, this is where everything's going to start, right? We pull in Peregrine, which is going to be our React starting point, helps us create an app. We're going to pull in, a utility or two, pull in our bare minimum of CSS, and then we're going to create a Peregrine instance, grab our root element out of the standard Magento view, set up a service worker, and then we can dynamically import pages, that is asynchronously load different pieces of our bundle, and then mount them into the DOM. And what that's going to get you is this. So this is our Venia theme, kind of our, like I said, our reference implementation. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, right, this is a React from the top down application. So Magento gave us basically a minimum app shell, right, with a root element. And then into that, we mount a React application, which is going to be a tree of components from top to bottom. So this is going to have a few components we'll dive into in a second. It's interactive, it has navigation, that kind of stuff. And then if we look at the network tab to see what's going on, right, we can see we had a request to the development server. We got back a document, right? We pulled down a client bundle. We pull down extra bundles being generated for the different pieces, like different routes of the application. And then of course, all the rest of the images. And then we're also doing some pre-caching because we have a service worker. We can pre-cache the next route. So we can say, okay, we're on the category page. We're going to pre-cache the product route, and so on. If I refresh the page, you can watch as the requests come in here. Ignoring the favicons. We can see that because we have a service worker, which is acting as like a cache layer, right? This is what really makes a PWA. Since our client.js and our other bundles have not changed since the last time we hit the page, there aren't even requests for those. Those are served from our local application cache, thanks to the service worker. And so this is going to mean that you're going to have an incredible experience for people who visit your site not only when they first hit the page, but especially after they've already visited your site once. So I had mentioned before that that all of these, that every part of this app is components from the top down. That's how React works. And so I figured we could go look real quickly at what that looks like to write a component, because you might be familiar with UI components in Magento or stuff. This is really just idiomatic React components. And so we'll take a look at what that is here. Here we have the gallery component, which we saw on that category page there. Basically, you're pulling in the fundamentals of React component and create element. We're pulling in some of our utilities for CSS modules, which I'll dive into in a second. We're pulling in some child components, and then our actual styles from the CSS file. So on a per component basis, you actually have CSS files. Rather than having one overall CSS file that you import at the top level of your app, or rather than organizing all of your files with less and then doing the organization of that inside of less itself, here you actually will write CSS files per component and import them in the component. And that's going to actually give you a lot of isolation and clear relationships between components and their styles. We'll get into that in a little bit. Up front, you can define what the interface for what your component accepts in terms of data looks like. So, we expect an array of data, in this case, products, and also some class names, which we'll be applying throughout our view. We have a render method, which is basically like the view you would be familiar with from other things. And what we're doing is we're taking in data into this component, and inside of a function call, returning the shape of this component in the DOM and applying the props or data that it receives in line. And so here we're basically decorating every level of this component, every piece of this component structure with the class names that will map to the styles that those things need. And then at the end, we're just exporting this so that other components can import this component and render it themselves. And so every piece at every level is either a built-in component like div or button, or a custom component like the one we've defined here, the gallery. To take a look at what's going on with the CSS, this is how CSS modules works. We define class names like root or actions, action, items, etc., and also write standard CSS to show how those things are going to look. And then CSS modules, right, the build system that is going to translate these into basically keys on an object. And when we import that, we can then apply it. And so this takes not only the class name, it picks up the styles. So if we look at our gallery element here in the DOM, we can see that it's pulled in the class name and it's pulled in the styles. More importantly, though, these class names are translated by the build system into something that's unique, which is called scoping. And that means that any component you write or any component you pull in from a third-party extension is going to have its own scoped styles. And so these names will never conflict with each other. So you don't have to write long selectors. You don't have to write complex, odd names. You can keep everything short and simple and not worry about collisions. At the same time, though, we've also taken some extra precautions to preserve the idea of being able to pass in new classes so that you can actually change the styles of individual components or compose components from other components. And so it's not only the gallery that defines its styles. The gallery really has a set of default styles, which are defined here in this file. But if you have your own custom gallery or you wanted to create a component that is composed of a gallery, you can specify your own classes with their own styles and pass those in. So we think that this is actually going to make development of Magento themes much more component-oriented, much easier to maintain, and have you worrying a lot less about compatibility between different pieces. So that's really all the preview that we have time to go through. But once this thing goes live, once we're able to share this, we'll be looking for feedback, and of course we'll be adding a lot more to the theme as we go. So I'm gonna pass it on to the next person.
Great. I think James is next.
Cool.
The next person? That's sort of an oddly impersonal way to refer to me, Jimmy.
What can I say?
Hi, guys. James Zetlin. I am, of course, familiar to almost all of you, so I won't go through introductions, but thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy has been incredible at just sort of creating structure that is sustainable and is understandable by developers of every level, just kind of straight up, sometimes on the first try, like Mozart, but without that weird high laugh from Amadeus. And I have been doing a little bit of code myself because there is an aspect of this that I think is maybe best approached by somebody who is not constantly immersed in the day-to-day. And that's the setup for a development environment. Now, those of you who can recall in the distant past, when you set up your Magento environment for the first time, it was pretty difficult, even with containerization and with the various guides and the meticulously maintained and extremely helpful documents about this posted by many people. There are just too many variables. PWA Studio is all about learning some new and sometimes challenging new techniques and doing so quickly and naturally, which means that it's of paramount importance that you not be distracted by configuration problems. Let me show you a little bit of something that uses this beautiful thing that Jimmy has shown off. Here we have a copy of Jimmy's theme. I'm in a CSS file. I'm in a Webpack config file. This config seems pretty long, but if you've seen a Webpack config before,
you're not sharing anything, James.
Oh yeah. I was hoping to get away with that.
Sorry,
Emperor
man.
has no clothes style.
Yeah.
All right.
Not on this.
So
stream.
I'm in a. Can you guys all see this?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's good, man.
Great. So I'm in the theme that Jimmy was working with, and I happen to be in a CSS file at the moment. Well, your pair program with me, it just kind of caught me in the middle of some adjustments. Here we are in the Webpack config file that we've created for this theme. It has a couple of customizations, but you might observe that it is using some tools that it got out of the Magento PWA build pack module that is now public on the NPM package registry today. We configure a couple of environment variables, really not very many, just an indication of where we're getting our CDN stuff from, what our local backend domain happens to be, and what the actual physical path of our Magento implementation is. And there is a little bit of customization, but the rest of this starts to look like a pretty standard Webpack config. Again, I'll go through it quickly because if you're familiar with it, you kind of know what this looks like. And if you're not, then there is excellent Webpack documentation. So I won't waste your time going through it. But here we go. We proceed through and we notice that we're instantiating a couple of special Webpack modules from Magento in order to resolve root components, in order to resolve configuration for the build session, and in order to create service workers. Some of this stuff is something you'll get a sneak preview of very soon. And then here's where things get interesting. We might notice we're creating an environment and creating a front end, and we're calling it a Peregrine app, and then we connecting it to a back end and passing it our Magento path, and then we start a build session. And then we return the Webpack config like usual. Well, let's see what this looks like when I actually try to start my development cycle. Observe again that here at this moment that you're going through something as a front-end developer you may have done before, we're not asking you to type a complex bin Magento, do some stuff you must remember. Can you see this terminal, by the way? It might be a little bit contrasty, but I can zoom in. We all good on that?
I think it looks good.
Good. I think it looks good too. So you're going to run npm start, the exact same command that you might be used to from other parts of the ecosystem. You might notice that Magento PWA Studio has taken things over a little bit because it is making sure that your build session is correctly configured. That includes the back end and the front end. It's got to make sure that the directories are symlinked together if that's what your system supports. It's got to make sure that your Magento store is configured so that it's going to allow development modes to work in the way that you expect and anticipate. Now that setup goes pretty quickly, and then you might notice that it's also produced this URL for us. It's running at magentovenia.local.pwa.dev. Let's check it out. Let's see. Oh, we might notice that it's proxying through to localhost. Maybe recognize this? Yeah, it's Jimmy's gorgeous theme. And we are now in a development session that was provisioned almost entirely without your intervention or your complex config. This may look long, but that's because it's explicit and careful to be clear what it's doing. All of the complicated determination of what these paths are is done by the build session. So now we got some things that we can show off about this experience that Jimmy has already went through to some extent. I mean, here we are in this button CSS, and I've decided that those things look kind of ugly and too round, so I'm gonna save that and replace, and that was quick. In fact, it'll be quicker when we get the hot module reloading going for CSS modules, but that's something we're still working on. On the other hand, this also looks pretty terrible. It's a bad experiment, so I'm going to go ahead and reverse it out, and we're good to go. So this is the experience, and the console logs almost continuously what the underlying PWA Studio is doing. In the same way, you get the same logging in your terminal, and ultimately, you're going to have a set of scenarios that you can select for where your terminal, for where all this logging stuff gets sort of aggregated and compiled. And that way, you can start to learn things. An interesting thing that you might notice too is that there are some things that you experience when you are a Magento developer that has to work on secure stuff, like provisioning Apache to have SSL certificates, running these complicated, weird open SSL commands. And then when you're done, you still see this. And then when you see this, you go, oh, I'll click through. I've done this before. And then you get to localhost, and you go, time to learn about service workers. And then the service worker says this. Because these tools have become more stringent than ever before about your SSL setup. The entire PWA universe lives inside an HTTPS only place. And yet, in order to configure our development environments to support HTTPS, we still usually have to paste a whole bunch of deep magic commands onto our command line that might as well be giving that guy root on our computer, whoever that blogger is. So instead of that, we have the PWA Studio build pack do all that stuff manually. And you can see an example of that by maybe creating a brand new build session. Here we have Magento Venia local PWA dev 8002. Now I'm going to go to the Hangout, and I'm going to pick a random person. Let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, Federico. Federico, are you muted?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm here.
Federico, do you have any pets?
No.
Okay. Do you have any children?
Not yet.
Do you have any favorite footballers?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can you give me the last name of one?
Messi, of course.
Messi it is. So now that seems like it's a ringer because everyone was going to pick Messi. But I will say that in our package file where we configure how Magento understands the name of the theme, we're going to change the name of this theme to Messi. And then canceled out of this. And I'm going to go ahead and act as though we're developing a totally new theme called Messi and do the exact same thing again. Okay, so again, it's trying to resolve and make sure that everything is configured properly on your local machine to support proper PWA development. Might be taking a little extra time this time. I wonder why. Ooh, boy. Hello? Oh, okay. It wants to make changes, which, that's usually pretty trustworthy, right? It's got the little lock. It's got some manner of logo. I have a long password, so that's right, fight me. And it's going to ask us this a couple of times. We want to be able to make this as simple as possible, but uh-oh. Oh no. Is this because it failed to? Of course the demo goes wrong. That's all right. We can figure this out. What we wanted to show you, I guess, let's see, was that it has provisioned everything that it needs to. And let's see, get address info wrap with the DNS. So that is something that is a bug that magically appeared during this demo, but no worries, it's a demo, you guys all understand. If you're familiar a little bit with the underlying sort of Unixy parts of this, you might see that there is no such thing as Magento messy yet, because apparently it forgot to add both of them. Let's go ahead and try this again, because it's now going to notice that it only needs to ask me one time. Hopefully I will enter my password in time. But what it was doing was, when you initially set up a store and you've never had it named, you've never worked on that theme before, it's going to ask you for a couple of administrator passwords in order to do some very particular things. One of them is it's going to generate an SSL certificate authority if it hasn't already. If it has, it doesn't need to do that. It's going to trust that authority in your preferred system, which usually that preferred system is, okay, let's see, I'm going to have to go into Etsy hosts, I think. Probably not going to work. We'll try it. Yeah, that's not right. Okay, so I'm going to have to do a manual edit so you can see at least the trust settings, and then just swallow my pride on the other stuff. Whoops. Ooh, they're ready for primetime players. Oh, well, there it is too. It worked that time. Connection refused because we have not actually changed the name. Oh, because it's 8003. Yeah, because it gave you a new port, because of course it did. That actually worked. The new port is provisioned because a lot of the times you might find as a developer, you're multitasking, you're working a lot of things simultaneously. So observe that not only does this immediately resolve to my local host, even though it's a brand new domain name, because I had no way of knowing that somebody would pick Messi as their favorite footballer, but also that it's already trusted, that the service worker, had I had it actually enabled at the time, which I don't because I'm doing some local development which requires no cache, the service worker is able to register because it's fully trusted. And that allows a whole lot of cool stuff to happen. Also, there's a whole set of configuration values which need to be set and maintained by Magento, and that's something that BuildPack understands. And if you feel like watching a whole lot of characters fly by on the screen, I can run this in debug mode, but we're already kind of running short on time. So ultimately, what we want BuildPack to be is to be a build session provider that can handle a whole lot of different configurations in different scenarios. Some people do development mode on a locally hosted Magento instance. Sometimes they do it in Vagrant. Sometimes you're running a production test or a CI test in one of those two environments. You often are using Docker these days, and there may be others. So the code for the build pack is designed so that it's going to support as much as possible in a fluent way. A build session has a set of supported front-end provisioners and supported back-end provisioners, which it iterates through to see if the things that were passed to it are something it can put together a reasonable scenario from. Right now, it's got local Webpack dev and local Webpack production. There may be more in the future for the build session. The back-end provisioner has a base implementation that does the things every back-end needs, and then you have, say, a OSX local hosted back-end provisioner. And this knows that this is probably where your HTTPD configuration is and your HTTP asset path, so that it can auto provision all of the important stuff. It connects directly to your local host through a shell adapter, and then it prepares all the other stuff. There's a similar Vagrant VM hosted version of this that also does very much the same stuff, although it knows that the paths may change for your Vagrant configuration and the restart command may change. But it tunnels through the Vagrant SSH system so that instead of running the exact same commands on local, it runs it through Vagrant. And it works. The same thing, of course, would happen with Docker. So new stream after go away. That's because I scrolled out of my tmux. You can see if you want to get a kind of a crazy notion of all that goes on here, what it would look like if I changed its name again to Magento Puerto Rico. What am I doing? Oh, I'm sorry. That should be an equal sign. Yikes. Okay, so that's set an environment variable that debugs, and now you're going to get a whole lot more information about what it's trying to calculate. You can see that it's going through the settings and it's making sure that they're configured appropriately, which they generally are. That's fine. It's making sure that development mode is set. It's making sure that everything's set. And sure enough, It's loading up. So there you go. This is going to provision and allow for you to run maybe multiple systems on the same computer, multiple PWA studios in the same environment, and work on multiple clients simultaneously. All those things being fairly important to working in an agency context, and most importantly, to learning this tool without having to constantly interrupt your learning process in order to reconfigure it. That's what I got. And now I think that probably the biggest single set of questions you guys still have is how this system is going to support the extensibility and the modularity that we've come to expect from Magento. That so far our PWAs that the community has produced, though fast and incredible and beautiful, can't really be said to support. And so with that, I am going to cede control to Andrew Levine. And thank you guys very much for your attention.
Hey, everyone. Can someone on the call give me a thumbs up that they can hear me all right? Beautiful, multiple thumbs. David, before I start, I know that we're already over our time for the demos. Do we still have time to go quick? Or if not, we can push, and I'm happy to record something and send it out to people later. I don't want to take people's time hostage.
We have time.
You sure?
We've got time. It is James's fault. No, yeah, we have time. We do have quite a lot of questions coming in, so I want to make sure we do have time for that. So if you could go, I don't know, maybe the key thing you want to get across, and then yeah.
You know what? I want to make sure we have time for questions. Okay. So just because we've used up too much time, I'll just tell everyone, go ahead and join the Magento Community Engineering channel. We have a channel called PWA, and if you go in there, I'll be more than happy to give you all demos.
Cool. Okay, I appreciate it. I'm sorry if we had to cut it short.
No, I'm sorry.
But we do have a ton of questions, and being someone who doesn't really do much front-end stuff, I need some help with these. Cool. So let's start with the first one I have, which was from MageDev, or Talesh, as he's better known. And he was basically, do you lose the advantages of less and Sass, as it was only pure good old-fashioned CSS shown during the demo? Over to.
Yeah, I had answered that in the chat, but I can go into it here. So the answer is no. You can use less or Sass or stylus or anything that can be layered on top, as part of the Webpack process, can still be used. So you can author your styles how you want, and then CSS modules is ultimately going to do the same transformation of class names. And so the only thing that we don't recommend you to do is use the systems within preprocessors like that to bundle your CSS all into one file by doing a bunch of imports and stuff. That's what we don't need anymore, because we're not trying to build one CSS file and send it with the first request. We're specifically trying to say, hey, associate CSS with components. And so it layers on top.
Yeah, and Webpack does support both CSS modules, post CSS, less, stylus, and Sass. It's just that whatever you use to do your authoring, downstream from that, as it goes into the actual package, our configuration system is going to be very careful about the size of the remaining asset. So sometimes you can do some stuff in Sass, use extends in the wrong way that really explodes the size of your compiled CSS, and you're going to find out about it. So I think it'll be trial and error. Some people will find that they'll learn new tools as they find what the PWA constraints are. But for now, it's the sky is open for you to try what you're already accustomed to that Webpack supports.
Yep.
Cool. All right. The next one, again from Talesh, and it's a security one because that's his jam. Do you add a root certificate, or do you add browser-specific certificates when it comes to SSL?
We're using a root certificate upon the initial creation of the first session you have, and then we store it in the user directory, and then trust it in the keychain or whatever the provisioned sort of trust system is for the local OS. That's actually well-tested code that's integrated into other systems. It's a library called DevCert. And the way that we keep it secure is that you create the root cert authority, but then immediately upon creating it and provisioning the site that is trusted by it, you delete the private key. So you can no longer sign any new sites with that root CA authority. The only downside there is that you might get a couple of redundant authorities, but since nothing can be trusted by them, it's about as secure as you can make this kind of thing. Also, all the certs expire in 30 days.
Okay, I'm sure if he doesn't like that idea, he'll let you know. He knows how.
Yeah, I bet he will.
Okay, cool. The next one comes from Michael with a unpronounceable surname. I'm very sorry, Michael. I presume that's Polish. In fact, I think I know the Michael. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Michael, if it's you. And what is the target reload time?
Oh, the target reload time. What you saw was the result of hot reloading being disabled because of CSS modules having currently a small issue with it. We're always going to err on the side of accuracy in the state presentation over speed in development mode. The hot reloading time is, of course, an only development time concern. So right now, because the CSS module hot reload is a little touchy, then you have to do a full page reload. So basically, we're saying it's 300 milliseconds instead of 30 milliseconds until we fix this bug, or until upstream they fix this bug in the Webpack level. Our target for the development mode is that you don't have a consistent reload time because you don't have to refresh the page for every change. A lot of the time, especially if it's a view-related change, especially if it's to a relatively stateless piece of code, the refresh will be almost instantaneous because it only has to refresh that piece of code.
Okay, cool. The next one we have is from Michael Parkin, and he asks, will PWA support server-side rendering for SEO?
Yes, but not completely. Most of the existing PWA implementations on Magento and otherwise are built so that the front end is running on a different server stack, usually Node.js. Almost always Node.js for the server-side render portion, because the technologies that they use, like React or Vue or whatever, usually have an adapter that instead of dealing directly with DOM nodes will spit out HTML. Of course, this isn't the most high performance thing. Fully server-side rendering in React has historically been a tough thing to get right in production, even for the very highest end users and creators of Node software. So rather than try to go down that road, especially because our backend is PHP and we don't want to make you stand up 2 servers just to run our PWA, we're choosing this approach. We're going to do as much server-side rendering inside the app shell initial generation as is necessary to do the metadata that SEO requires. And it's more important even than SEO is the metadata that will create a good media object when someone links to this thing in social media or Slack or some other context. So we are going to do that minimal render, and the app shell is still going to be familiar old PHP, but the actual content and presentation will be loaded in dynamically. That said, I mean, most of the major search engines are also loading PWAs fully in their spider crawls these days anyway.
Okay, cool. Just a reminder for anyone watching, we also have Anton Krill, we have Olga, and we have Mohammed and Federico. So if you have any questions to the community members about contribution, put them in the chat as well. Or if you have anything tricky for Anton or Olga, we will get on actually perfect time for a little PWA break. And Olga is here because we are working on the PHP 7.2 or the compatibility with PHP 7.2. And she just wanted to share a little something while I sort through a few more questions. I think this is a perfect break for that, if that's all right. So I'll hand over to her for a moment.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Olga Kopylova, an architect on Magento project. So I probably won't share the screen because I have just maybe a minute or so. So I just wanted to share that right now we are I'm leading a community project on PHP 7.2, which obviously just enables Magento being compatible with PHP 7.2. And why we do it is because support for PHP 7.0 and 7.1, which are currently supported by Magento 2.2, will be dropped. So for 7.0, it will be totally dropped in the end of this year. And for PHP 7.1, it will be supported till the end of this year, and then one more year for security support. So it's really important to have support for 7.2 in Magento. So basically, that's the important part. And there is a project, it's already in progress. And we have Mohammed here who is joining us, and thanks for that. And we have Patrick who's contributing, and a few other people. So if you have any questions or you are interested in the project, just ping me. There should be an information on the video later, or just talk to the community engineering team. And thank you.
Cool. No pressure, Mohammed, but it's now being said on a live stream, so you have to get involved with PHP 7.2. Sorry. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, if you want to know anything more about any of the projects, whether it's the PHP 7.2, MSI, PWA, whatever, you want to get involved, the best place to start is probably the Slack channel. If you're not in the Slack channel, send an email to engcom@magento.com. There will be the email in the video description. Yeah, we'll get you involved into that Slack and just join the channels that fit you best and where you want to get involved. Yeah, and start with the contribution. I'm going to go with a controversial question here. It came from Michael again, and it's why not promote using external Magento backend so that the front end only needs to have Node running on their local machine?
Why not, indeed? I received a similar question of Mage Titans. The short answer is that we decided that would be too exclusionary. Part of the reason that Google approached us to talk about making PWAs native to Magento is that Magento is a tool that somewhat uniquely is both extremely powerful and commonly used by developers and merchants that who don't have the financial resources to do very long, very complex senior dev projects, or to do complex IT. Nothing is stopping you from using our tools to produce a Node.js-backed PWA. Peregrine-generated React components are fully compatible with server-side rendering, which is not something we had to work at. That's just the way it is. And there's going to be a public repository that's increasingly well-maintained for you to do that yourself. It's just that for the default implementation, putting it on top of the same web server that runs Magento is a super easy setup. It's a lower barrier to entry for those people who want to learn PWA without having a lot of money or time.
Cool. Okay, I keep losing the mute button, so sounds great. So far, I'm going to go with one more question, unless something comes for Anton Krill, because I really want to get him a question.
What the question for me? I think we have also the other section, a good section on PWA from Andrew. So if we have some time, I think it would be useful to present one more part of PWA, right? Andrew?
Yeah, I think a lot of questions might occur right now that Andrew's demo would answer if he's still around and still available and willing.
So I'm okay for going through that demo. If you are needing to leave the call, if you're in the chat, sorry, watching it and you need to leave, bear in mind that this video will be live afterwards. After we've finished, it will be live to watch at your leisure. So let's yeah.
Oh yeah, let's just go ahead and keep taking care of the questions. I'll just go ahead and record a demo of this after and put it up on YouTube, and that way we can share it with people. And I'll be available in the community engineering chat if there's any questions on it.
Okay. We'll go it that way then. So then, someone's asked if we are going to create the PWA theme with the whole Magento functionality ready and out of the box to go.
Bring on Levine. Yeah, we are going to do as much as we can. I think the Magento PWA Studio approach clearly, as we keep saying to everyone, is tacking towards making the developer tools extremely robust. And that consumes time. We also know that the UX, the proper concepts and the sort of ways that common e-commerce workflows need to adjust to accommodate a PWA world, that's something we're still exhaustively researching. So long story short, no, not in Imagine will we have a full theme that does everything that the Luma theme does. There may be some use cases that are not the most common, that are not supported, and there may not be as high performance code and behavior, towards the end of your conversion process when you're much less likely to bounce a customer. They've already built a cart, things like that. So no, we're not going to do it for Imagine, and we are certainly looking into and thinking about ways that we can leverage and compensate folks in the community for helping out with that. I've said this a bunch of times before, but if we just made another PWA theme and concentrated all on that, then we would just be competing with the folks who have built their own and the various agencies that have done such a good job at doing that. Instead, what we will have will be some core components you can use to put together common pages very quickly, and we are going to have a subset of functionality implemented in the standard PWA Studio way. And we'll choose that subset based on what's most likely to be a landing page, and therefore what's most likely to add value to your store today.
Okay, so that's a good question just to come in right now. Brendan asks, what are the biggest unanswered questions still in the PWA project?
That's one of them.
The complete everything, or the question itself?
Hi, Brendan. The biggest unanswered question, I think, for me, is how we are going to manage and help our community with, can you hear me? Okay, how we're going to manage and help our community with migrating those valuable things that they've made into PWA compatible UI. We largely think that that's going to happen by itself, and you and I actually have talked about this before, and we don't want to just lean on the fact that people are compelled by the market to upgrade their UIs. We want to find ways to help people bring the code that they've made, even if it's just block implementations, into a PWA world. What we don't want to do is try and fail to come up with some automated method or some enclosed method of bringing in people's existing UI, which would come at the cost of performance. To me, that's the big question. And I mean, there's other smaller ones. I think we're always going to be wondering how we reconcile the virtual DOM approach with high performance. We're wondering whether we're going to stick with the single stack approach. There's a million questions. Since we've publicized repositories, those questions are going to be much more viewable to you and our actual conversations about them.
Okay, so I think what I'm understanding is there is a lot to go, and you're looking for kind of the community response to see where the priorities are for people.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
Am I cutting out?
Little bit, yeah. I think it's because I'm switching between the tabs to look at the chat, but I'll turn off the chat tab. I'll trust you.
Basically, as far as I can see, you're looking for a lot of shape and direction from the community and people out there in the Magento world, I guess. So what is, you've mentioned it before, we've mentioned it a few times, is the best channel for you for communication or for people to reach out to you through the Slack?
For me, I have been completely off the line for quite some time, mostly so that I could help kind of get like a final push going for some demo, but I'm shifting gears. So you'll be able to reach me a lot more consistently everywhere that I am present, which is currently, though dormant, Twitter, the community engineering Slack, the Mage Chat Slack, and then the forums. Even direct access to me via email is fine. My turnaround may be a little weird sometimes, but you can talk to me in all those places. But I don't scale very well, and there are increasingly great repositories of knowledge and strategy here on our team that ain't me. Andrew will answer any question that I could answer in like a quarter of the number of words. Eric is going to have the business approach to this absolutely down anytime you ask him. So talk to me certainly about the big the big architectural ideas. But I want to clarify too, David, that you said we're looking for guidance from the community, and we are, but we're not just punting to community to make big decisions. What we need to do is make the decisions that we are in the position to make, and leave the stuff that would be pointless for us to enforce out of it. We're going to say, here's how you do extensibility. Here's the type of technology that we should use so that you can merge other components in. As for how you achieve the performance, as for how you organize your actual component hierarchy beyond that, as for even what you use in the view layer if you want to write your own integration, we don't want to impose that. And so we're still looking around for the things that we can provide as a platform instead of as a fully end-to-end solution, so that when we ask community for stuff, it's in that area of feature where a community would like to be the least encumbered.
Wonderful clarification. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I guess since we're already a bit over time, this is where we're going to leave it for today. I appreciate everyone that came on and got involved. I'm very sorry that we couldn't get the full thing done, but Andrew has promised that he will get a demo out there. And so please just keep pestering until he does it, I guess is the best way. Maybe that means there's time for PWA Hangout Part 2 coming up at some point. And we can see
after party.
And we can see how it's progressing in time. Yeah, so I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining in. I want to thank the whole PWA team that's come in. I want to thank Federico and Mohammed for coming in and sharing a contribution from the community side. Olga for coming in and talking about PHP 7.2. Anton for coming in and waiting for questions that never come. So next time, I will give a sticker to the best question for Anton that comes into the chat. Okay? I will post the sticker myself. All right, and I want to leave with one final thing, which is from the community engineering team. Not only a big thank you for the first 2 months of the year, they have been amazing for us, and I want to continue with that, and we want to continue with that with you guys. This is all about opening up two-way communication and getting it as open as possible. And with that, we are having our distributed contribution day on the 24th of March. And it will be across many locations. If you would like any more information, it will be in a blog coming up soon, but the 24th of March is the date, which is a Saturday. There will be a location in the Ukraine, in Poland, Slovakia or Slovenia, not sure. It's Atwix. Atwix will be hosting. There will be one in the Netherlands, and there will be one in the UK. So look out for some more information with regards to that. Yeah, and feel free to join that remotely as well. If there's not a location near you, that shouldn't be stopping you from joining if you want to. We will be there as a team. We'll be open and communicating on Slack. So feel free to reach out to us just as if you would in a physical event. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. The video will be uploaded pretty much straight after, Ben. I'm not sure how long YouTube will take to process it, but you can watch it at your leisure afterwards. So if you've missed something, feel free to come in later on and watch it again. So guys and girls, thank you very much for joining. and we will see you at the next Hangout. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you in Slack.
Yeah.